Welcome, everyone. I'm David Paparelli, the co-founder of M-Cultivo, and this is The Cupping Table. Over the next few weeks, we'll be hearing from some of the best coffee producers in the world. They will be sharing their stories, insights, and outlook on specialty coffee and what makes their coffee so unique. My guest today is the founder of Kona Farm Direct, a coffee farm hobbyist turned 30-year Hawaiian coffee veteran. I met Kraig through the Dubai coffee auction we are working on together. He was gracious enough to send us a coffee for the auction, and when I cupped it, I was absolutely blown away. We'll get into why and how that coffee came to be today. Welcome, Kraig Lee.
Well, aloha from the sunny island of Kona. The island of Hawaii, I'm sorry. Yes.
I love it. Yeah, so the first and most important question, Kraig, what coffee are you drinking today?
Right now, I'm drinking Kona Typica. It's my go-to cup of coffee every morning, but we do all those specialty varietals as well, and those are awesome. But my go-to cup every morning is Kona Typica.
And we'll get into Kona Typica, I believe, is one of the more common varieties you see, obviously being called Kona Typica in Hawaii. We'll get into a little bit more of the experimentation you do on varieties. But just for the people that don't know, Kona Farm Direct, give us kind of a brief overview of your operation, what you have going on in Hawaii.
So Kona Farm Direct, we're a little 5-acre or 2-hectare farm here on the slopes of Hualalai on the island of Hawaii. And it's my home, my house here on the farm. And we process coffee for ourselves. We process coffee for other adjoining farms here up in the mountains here. And
so
go ahead.
And it's you, and it's your farm, and then you manage 8 other farms, right? And you're kind of living over all of those operations. How do you get 8 other farms? What's the story there?
So in Hawaii, there's approximately 650 coffee farmers on the Kona coast, and ranging in size from little 1-acre farms up to 100, 200. There's one 500-acre farm here in Kona, and a lot of them are owned by locals that live here, and many of the farms are owned by people that are from the mainland or from abroad that have a vacation home and a farm, and they need people to take care of their farm, kind of like a manager. So we manage 8 other farms besides this one, and then we do consulting for a number of other farms here in Kona as well.
And did that sort of happen organically, or was that something you kind of marketed to people who came down and just said, hey, you should own a coffee farm for me to manage and process your coffee? I mean, how do you get into the coffee farm management?
It happened organically. It just kind of evolved over the years. It just relationships that you've established. Probably 95% of all my friends and associates are other fellow coffee farmers. It's just a great community here that way. So you get to know people and you hit it off well with them. They need somebody to take care of their place, and you fill that need when you can, and they pay me for it. And my crew, takes care of the maintenance of the farm, the harvesting, the picking, the pruning, all of that. We process the coffee for them, keep it separate, ensuring that they get their coffee back. We help them sell it, or they have the avenues to sell it themselves. So our storeroom is just a chaos. It's bags and bags of coffee, and they're all labeled with the names of the farmers on them, so we don't get them mixed up. Very important. Labeling.
Unbelievable operation. And so you started coffee farming 30 years ago as a hobbyist in Hawaii. Take us back to that time and tell us, why did you pick it up as a hobby?
Well, it was an opportunity arose way back then. I was in my early 20s. an opportunity came up to purchase 8 acres of land. And we purchased it with my in-laws at the time. So it was a joint venture. I was a young carpenter. I built homes for a living back then. So my father-in-law decided, hey, let's buy this piece of land, and then we'll have Kraig build us the house, and build 2 houses, actually. We'll live on the land together. And then I had my 2 daughters, were just babies at the time. And so it was a great family compound kind of thing. And it worked out beautifully. It's just fond memories. So I built the 2 houses, and then we've got 8 acres of land. Gosh, we got to grow something. It's an agricultural lot. So what do? Do we grow pineapples, avocados, macadamia nuts? What do we grow? Well, coffee, Kona coffee. That's kind of famous here in Kona, isn't it? It's just a naive 20-something-year-old kid. And so, yeah, coffee. There's lots of neighbors up here growing coffee. Let's try that. We like coffee. So that's how it started. And we planted about 5 acres of coffee. And it was a beautiful thing back then, because the different neighbors that were already coffee farmers, this was back in the 90s, they actually came over and helped us plant the trees.
Wow.
Neighbors.
Okay.
And it was just a cool thing. So again, it's all based on friendships and relationships, and those relationships have fostered over the years. And and farmers in general are usually pretty down-to-earth, good people. And you get to know them, and it's just a fantastic community here. So it started as a hobby. We grew coffee, and then we started getting involved in the Kona coffee community. We learned about the local cupping competitions, and maybe we should try that. So the first year it was about the 3rd year we were producing coffee, was year 2000. We submitted our Kona Typica in the local Kona coffee cupping competition. There was about 70 some entries, and just dumb luck, we won first place in year 2000. So
Wow.
that just got me really excited as a young farmer, and my in-laws as well. So our little hobby just kind of blew up after that, because when we really started focusing and contributing more resources to it and effort and so forth, and it's just grown ever since.
What brought you to Hawaii originally? Because you're from California, right? So what made you step foot on the island and say, I'm gonna, set up a home here, set up a family here, get married? What brought you there originally?
Yeah, so back in California as a young kid, I graduated from high school, and then I was looking at what to do with my life. And over here in Hawaii, there's a Christian missionary school called Youth with a Mission. So that right out of high school, I came over to Hawaii to go through some of their Bible courses and training courses and classes. And it was fantastic as a young man. And then we went to different outreaches over to the Philippines, Hong Kong, and China. And so that's what got me started in Hawaii. And then I met my wife, of course, in Youth with a Mission. And we got married, and we moved back to California for a year and a half. And then it's like, I don't want to live in California. Let's go back to Kona. So we moved, my wife and I moved back to California. We had our first 2 daughters, and my in-laws had moved here around the same, just before us. So we ended up buying a piece of land together and building the farm. So that's a brief background.
You must have a unique relationship with your in-laws. I don't know many people who would move in with their in-laws in their early 20s to spend all that time, build a property, and go into business with them.
They were great people. They were really good people. They've since passed on, my in-laws, but yeah. I'm 58 now.
Yeah. Late condolences there. So Kona Coffee. So 30 years ago, so I remember growing up in the U.S., and I would lump Kona Coffee in with Jamaica Blue Mountain. These sort of hyped up, call them country brands in the U.S. People were willing to pay a premium for them. It was one of the first coffees I remember people would actually pay more for and get them direct. it seemed like over that 30 years, you've had ebbs and flows of the Kona brand being really significant, really high, and then, Guatemalan and Panama coffee, specialty coffee starts getting invented, and then all these other coffees start getting discovered. What's been your experience with those ebbs and flows of Kona coffee over your 30-year career?
Well, we've seen lots of highs and lows, and there's a whole history I've learned about of the Kona coffee industry. It's been over 200 years, 230 years they've been growing Kona coffee here. So it's gone through lots of peaks and valleys and crashes and so forth. When I got into it, it was the whole specialty coffee craze, thanks to Starbucks and others, was just really taking off. And so we started selling the Kona coffee. Back then, it was maybe $6 or $8 a pound for the green bean, which back 30 years ago was a lot of money. And since then, we've seen it climb ever since. And now the prices are anywhere from $20 to $30 a pound for the green beans. It's just unbelievable. It sounds good, but the cost of production in the United States and especially here in Hawaii is tremendous. So it sounds like a lot of money, but it costs a lot of money. So the margins are still thin.
Well, relative to the coffee industry, you have a pretty small farm too. I mean, even including the 8 other farms you manage, it doesn't sound like there's many economies of scale in Kona coffee either. So the cost of production and the labor cost must hit you really hard.
Yes. Yeah. The labor costs are tremendous. U.S. labor laws, it's a good thing, for the employees, but it costs money. And the state of Hawaii has specific labor laws too. On a salaried or a payrolled employee, we're obligated to pay their medical insurance. So that costs me over $500 to $600 a month per employee on top of their wage. So it sounds terrible for the employer, but I'm glad to be able to provide that for my employees. I've got some of the best employees on the island. I'll gladly brag about them. So not only good workers, but they're dear friends, and we've got a camaraderie that's just priceless.
I appreciate that. It's such a I mean, it takes a special person to be the face of something like Kona Farm Direct and kind of lead that charge. But it's so much of that must be your team, that's having a good team around you to keep it going for 30 years, right?
I can motivate them, but I can't do all the work without them. I need them a lot. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you mentioned Kona coffee prices being at $20-$30 a pound now. Is that an average?
For green beans, yes. Yes.
And is that primarily driven by the cost of production, or is that market demand that's driving that, or is supply demand kind of balanced out to get you there? How does that pricing get set? Because that's probably maybe 10 times higher than some coffee growing areas.
Right. It's always been like that. It's always been very high compared to the rest of the world. Just like the Jamaican blue. Jamaican and Kona have always kind of rivaled each other for years and years. And they're always looking at our prices, and we're always looking at theirs through different brokers and contacts we have and so forth. But yeah, no, the cost of it's tremendous, but the cost to produce it is a lot. Everything has to be imported. Our chemicals, our fertilizers, labor, of course. The cost of housing is very expensive here.
Have you worked out at all roughly what the cost to produce a pound of Kona coffee would be?
Yeah, my hard costs are it varies from year to year, and it can be as low as $15 a pound and as high as $20 a pound.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. So our lower grade Konas that go for that 18 or 20, 20 is pretty much a break even. It's the upper grades and like the peaberry and stuff that are the margin, the profit.
Holy cow. Yeah. And so yeah, so you're as you said, I mean, you're basically, depending on the year, almost at break even, just basically like the rest of the coffee world, right? I mean,
Some
that's a
years it's been a break even or even a slight loss. Some
yeah,
years, but welcome to the coffee industry everywhere, I'm sure. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. Not always a great place to make money. Very rarely so. And so $20-$30 a pound for coffee. Who's the primary buyer for Kona coffee?
Primary
Who's
buyers,
buying
there's a
$30?
lot of roasters here locally in the state. And we do sell a lot of the coffee goes to tourists, people that are visiting on vacation. So that's a huge market. That huge markets are independent websites. Individual farmers, we're doing our own marketing and our direct sales. Therefore, the name that we came up with for my business used to be a different name. And then just 10 years ago, we came up with Kona Farm Direct. And it's appropriate because we can sell direct to the consumer. We do wholesale green as well, but direct to the consumer is fantastic through web sales. And then tourism too. We have small farm tours occasionally, have groups of people come see the farm. We show them the trees, show them the nursery where we're growing the plants, bring them out on our lanai with the view of the ocean and serve them cups of coffee and different varietals. And they just fall in love with it. And yeah, we retail the coffee for $50 or $60 a pound, roasted. And they'll buy
Wow.
they'll either buy one bag or they'll buy $200 worth and take it home for gifts and presents to their friends back home.
Yeah.
And then we've established a friendship, a rapport, so they'll continue ordering on our website.
And then, yeah, so is this a high percentage of your coffee basically shifted to roasted direct sales? Then you do a small amount green wholesale. Is it 50-50?
Yeah, it's about 50-50. Yeah, we're trying to increase sales because the more you retail, the better your business. But we do wholesale green coffee, both here in the state and in the continental U.S.
Amazing. And are you roasting the coffee, or you contract that out?
Yeah, no. So I've collected a number of roasters. I have 3 Dietrich roasters. We have a little Roast sample roaster. And I think what else? Oh, we have a Mill City roaster that's a couple that's working for me now, set up in my roasting facility. So I think
Yeah.
we have 6 different roasters on the property, on the farm.
It's unbelievable. It's always I think, it's amazing to me that farmers can be basically fully integrated. I mean, you're running, it's like running 5 or 6 different businesses, right? It's always amazing to me to hear that, but it's never a surprise to me because it does seem that the best producers in the world, producers that we're lucky enough to work with, all have a great understanding of roasting and brewing coffee as well, because they need to know what the final product tastes like, right? So it's not uncommon for them to have coffee shops. It's not uncommon for them to have roasteries. This is kind of a trend that's emerged, but good God, they are all incredibly difficult businesses to be in, and they're attacking all of them.
There's a quote that I've heard years ago, and it makes perfect sense, and it's probably the main thing in my coffee life is coffee is addicting in more ways than one.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, you certainly get dialed in. And
You get
coming from
obsessed with every aspect of it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you do sort of get it sounds like you were in carpentry before, and then you shifted into coffee. Obviously that helps with building up the farm, but were there aspects of carpentry that sort of carried over naturally into kind of getting obsessive about coffee?
Well, I've used my carpentry skills to build the drying decks here, to build other facilities, my warehouse, storage rooms, my little dehumidifying room for doing naturals. Just whenever I need something built, I build it. Actually, I
It's
built a number
unbelievable.
of coffee dryers. I hired a welder friend to help me, and we fashioned up some vertical dryers. I think we built 7 of them. We sold
Wow.
off 3 of them, and I have 4 of them here working on the farm, little vertical dryers. They're fantastic for small batches.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful too. If you walk, I'd love to hear about your process or your approach to coffee. It sounds like it's a little bit, um, you know, at least part of it has to be unique to you. If you built all this equipment basically from scratch, I mean, you've got a one of a kind dryer, you've got a one of a kind, raised bed, you got a one of a kind patio, right? Just because of the nature of you constructing all this stuff. Um, how do you, how have you processed coffee? What are the various ways you process coffee, and walk us through those methods?
Well, the vast majority of our coffee here in Kona is the wash method. We pulp it, soak it overnight, and then rinse it thoroughly the next day, put it out on a patio or direct into our dryers, depending on how quickly it's coming in, how fast it's coming in. We don't have any patio space. We just put it in the dryer, soaking wet. And it dries in just about 20 hours of dry time. We shut the dryers off at nighttime, but they dry. So mechanically drying is the only way to keep the volume going. And I would contend it's a more consistent way to dry the coffee mechanically. So we use furnaces to blow warm air up through the dryers. We used to use the old traditional burner blower system, grossly inefficient, uses a lot of propane and a lot of electricity. Now we use household furnaces like you would put in the basement of a house to keep the house warm. So those are very efficient, like 96% efficient. They'll blow air through it. We have a lot more control over the temperature, and it's a dry heat because it's a heat exchange instead of blowing the fumes of the propane through the coffee. So that's something we've learned over the years. The furnaces are the way to go on the dryers. And so washed coffee is 95% of what we do.
Wow. How'd you discover the home furnace? Like it's such a practical idea. How'd you decide to do that?
So again, you meet people in the industry, and there was an old retired guy, Rick, and he used to do heating back in Seattle. And so he moved over here, got into farming, and he would examine all this stuff. And why the heck are they just blowing a flame into a squirrel fan and blowing hot air through the coffee? Just didn't make any sense to him because he'd installed thousands of these household furnaces, serviced them for years. And so he was the pioneer of that about, probably 20 years ago. And then I started learning from him. And so over here in Hawaii, there's very few furnaces used in houses. It's all air conditioning in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
So years ago, I bought a furnace, and then I needed to hire an HVAC guy to come and get it going for the dryer. He came out and he charged me, his minimum was like $85 just to be there, right? And he couldn't figure it out. He didn't know what to do with the furnace. He'd never seen one or touched one in his life, and he's a certified HVAC guy. And he knew everything there was to know about air conditioning, but knew nothing about furnaces. So it was frustrating. So I called Rick and say, "Hey, Rick, what do I do?" Well, he happened to be in town at the time. He came over and helped me set it up. And just out of sheer necessity, I've learned how to do it myself. I'm not an HVAC guy, but you learn what you need to do. It's just that you do what you got to do to figure it out. So I think I've brought in over, 25 furnaces over the years here in the last 10 years, not only for mine, but for other farmers, helping convert them, get them going. So we help other farmers as well. Again, it's all based on rapport and relationships and that sort of thing. So I have to charge for my time sometimes, but many times farmers just help each other out just to help out, don't even charge.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah, especially coffee does attract a great community, and you might be the most qualified guy to work on heating on the island. I don't know how valuable that is outside of coffee, but you might be there.
No,
and we go ahead.
No, I just for the coffee dryers is all. Yeah,
just for the coffee. Not bold enough to install them in houses yet. You don't want to cause any fires,
right? Exactly.
But so. in your process, we talked about this a little bit previous to the call, but you're experimenting. So you've got 90% of your process is just washed coffees, and you're doing volume producing delicious washed coffees. You got 10%. It sounds like that you do some kind of research and development type activities on. Would you call that
Yeah.
experiment?
So it's not unique to me. Of course, again, it's all through relationships, and there's other people that are very passionate about finding new processes and new methods and making awesome coffees. So there's fellow farmers that have gotten into the different varietals and the different processing and using yeast to inoculate the fermentation, and then not just overnight, not just one day, but we've pushed the limit to 48 hours, 60 hours, 100 hours, and done different experiments and trials to see which ones achieve a different cup. Did we take it too far? Not enough? That sort of thing. So we've done lots of experiments over the last 10 years, not only myself, but other farmers. And then most of those farmers are eager to collaborate and share information. There's always a few that kind of keep secrets or whatever, but it's not rocket science, you know. I mean, we all figure it out. So
Right.
there's other farms I can give more credit to that have inspired me and given me the information and which yeast to use. We've helped each other out a lot, and it had tremendous success. The SL34 that we submitted, we find that there's a yeast called Ven 13, and we use that in the SL34. We've tried many different yeasts with the SL34. We find we keep coming back to the Ven 13. Just adds that fruity wininess to it. It just makes it beautiful. It's always the best so far. There might be other. We'll continue to experiment, but we really like that. The sweet spot is about 48 hours to 60 hours on the ferment. When I first started years ago, I was just doing it in an open container, and there was fruit flies on it and everything, and it's tasted great. But we've learned that it's way better to keep it sterile and or sterilized and clean and so forth. So now we're doing anaerobic in plastic bags. I did purchase a real fancy stainless steel fermenter also. So that was from the Estrada people out of Colombia. They've been a great help to me over the years, from pulpers and dryers and everything, equipment. So, and then also we're doing one method. It was fascinating. We usually do smaller batches in garbage cans with like an Ecotech bag with the yeast inside and seal it up. Keeps it clean, and the bag bloats and gets full, CO2 being released. It's fascinating. So another method, we'll put it in a big tub, 100-gallon tub, and then inoculate it with yeast. And then we get a big sheet of plastic and put over the top, and then fill up water on top. So it's about 6 or 8 inches of water on top. I guess it's called the water pillow method. And so the water keeps it sealed, the plastic, and then it can ferment, and then the bubbles start coming up. And the next day it's going so aggressively, I affectionately renamed it the jacuzzi method. Because the fermentation is just going so aggressively. It's impressive to see. So we let that go for about 60 hours, and then we're able to rinse it thoroughly, put it on the patio for a day, and then finish it off in the dryers at a little bit lower temperature.
Yeah, I imagine in Hawaii, these experimental methods are rare. Did you pick these up, most of these in Hawaii, from other producers? Did you research around the world? How'd you get to 60-hour anaerobic fermentation methods? How do you land there?
I learned it mostly from other farmers here in Kona. There are a number, there's about 6 other farmers that I'm aware of that are really getting into the different inoculations and fermentation methods. And we collaborate a lot. And then as a result of that, we're doing more research online. There is one guy that travels a lot all over the world, Miguel Mesa. and he's a wealth of knowledge, wealth of information. So he helps me out a lot, and he buys some of my specialty batches for his business as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's one of those
And
guys that's really into it. Yeah.
do you, I mean, I've talked to other farmers about this, a farmer we had on previously was from a farm called La Negrita. I think he talked about using champagne yeast and different things, experimenting. Do you have it seems like all these producers have some margin for failure that's not small, right?
Yeah.
How many of these, this 10% that you're willing to experiment on, how much of that do you expect to just completely fail and you allow for that?
Good question. We never want to have any batches go bad because the coffee is so darn valuable. And it just breaks your heart, of course, to have anything fail like that. But it happens. It's usually smaller batches that we do the riskier experiments with. I did have one really big, for me, a big failure last year. We had one of our biggest rounds of picking on a SL34. I think we had like 3,200 pounds of SL34 cherries. And that was a big round for us. Mm-hmm. And we pulped it all, and I put it in a big vat because I had to. And it was during the thick of the season. We didn't have space. So I inoculated it with yeast. I put the lid on it. Well, come to find out, that was the wrong container to put it in because the thermal dynamic of it got up over 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I left it in there for 2 days, which is the proper time. Yeah. But it was a big insulated container, and it got so hot, and it just soured the whole batch. That was broke my heart because the coffee's so amazing, but that batch was just wasted. So we had to scrap that whole batch. So for us, that with 3,200 pounds, gosh, that would have been about 400 pounds of green, 500 pounds of green bean gone.
Yeah, gone. And for you, 400 pounds of roasted too, right? I mean, that's the main channel for you.
That was a big loss.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I want to talk a little bit about this SL34. Sorry, you mentioned it a few times. I got to cup it. The reaction around the cupping table when we've cupped it here in London is always a shock because I feel like it shifts the paradigm in specialty coffee a little bit for everyone around the cupping table, just because I don't feel like the specialty coffee community knows as much as they should about Kona coffee. It's sort of being rediscovered, I think, in the specialty coffee space after it's been known so well for so long. But cupping the coffee, the quality that it's at, and then realizing that it's grown at 488 meters, right? That's the part that's sort of kind of shocking. So if you could kind of talk us through this SL34, why 488 meters makes sense in Hawaii, and how this coffee can possibly taste so good.
Well, as far as the elevation here in Kona, we don't know any better. This is kind of the growing region between. I'm going in feet because that's what's familiar with me. The growing region is between 1,000 and 2,800 foot elevation. There are farms that are trying to grow it over 3,000 foot elevation, which is 900 meters or so. Their production dips off tremendously. It gets so cool up there that the production sucks. The production's terrible in Kona if you get up over 3,000 feet. There's different varietals they're experimenting with, like Red Couture does okay at the high elevation and so forth, and there's others, but totally different cup. So, at the elevation, it's kind of the sweet spot in Kona is about 1,500 feet for production and quality. The quality does increase when we get up around 2,000 to 2,600. I've got a couple of farms that I take care of that are at 2,600 foot elevation. We're growing some geisha up there and some K7. And the K7, the cup is fantastic, but the production is really low at that elevation. The geisha seems to be doing okay. The quality is fantastic. Production's acceptable.
but our high yields come at about 1,500 to 1,800 foot elevation. That seems to be the sweet spot for quality and production
And
at our latitude here in Hawaii.
and it at that the microclimate that you're growing in is, the weather's relatively consistent, temperatures aren't getting too hot, too cold. I mean, it's basically just that Goldilocks zone for coffee. It just happens to be at 500 meters.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Here in Hawaii, that's what it is. When I hear of in Panama, they're growing it at what, 2,000, 3,000 meters? Or how high is it?
Yeah,
It's amazing.
2,000 meters is common. 2,300 meters is really high. That's really pushing the
Yeah.
limit. But yeah, that, some of the best geisha comes from kind of 1,800 meters plus. Yeah.
That's mind-boggling. Yeah, that's amazing that it grows that high. To me, it's a foreign concept here in Hawaii.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, everybody's looking at you in the opposite direction and saying that's a foreign
Sure.
concept. So I think there's a lot to learn from each other. And then SL34 as a variety. What's the
So
history of that? How
SL34,
that landed in Hawaii?
just a brief history. So it was brought in, I think, 20 years ago over to Honolulu to an arboretum that's run by the state. PBARC is the acronym for it, and forgive me, I can't remember what that stands for right now. But there are some really wonderful people been running that for a long time. One lady, Shifumi Nagai is her name, and she's I think she's retired, but she ran that for years and years. So it's an arboretum, and they have all different varietals, come to find out, over there. There's one farmer in Kona called Hula Daddy Coffee. They're fantastic friends and really done well with varietals and so forth. They set an appointment with Shifumi, went over to PBARC in Honolulu. This was about 12 years ago. And they were just interested in trying new varietals. They were just thought, let's try. So Shifumi took them around in the arboretum, said, well, this cherry is mocha. This one is SL28. That's what they told him, SL28. And there was red bourbon and others. So they gathered some seeds and went through the proper channels, brought them back inner island to the big island, and they started growing new varietals. And they did really well with the mocha, really exotic varietal and very difficult to pick and all that. They started doing well in the competitions and actually won with the SL28. And it was at what Shifumi was told it was SL28 20 some years ago. And so that's what she told everybody, that they just never had it tested. So then Hula Daddy Coffee had me start growing the more trees for them. I have a nursery operation. We sell trees and provide them to many farmers all over the island here. So we started propagating SL28, and I knew they were doing well. I said, hey, do you mind if I grow some on my farm too? And of course, yeah, absolutely. So I started growing it too. And then we were propagating the trees and we were selling them to other farmers. And one farmer in particular was curious, well, how do you know it's SL28? I said, they told me so. So let's get it tested. So back then we could send it over to France to get it genetically tested. And we did. And the results came back. This is not SL28. This is SL34. It's like, oh, wow. Okay. So then that customer actually, to double check, they were really anal group about this. They sent in a sample independently and had it verified. And sure enough, it's SL34. So I had to let all my customers know that had been buying the SL28 that it was really SL34. There's one customer that actually had a bunch of labels printed, was marketing the SL28. So he's kind of stuck with it, calling it SL28 until he exhausted all of his labels. Interesting story. But it truly is SL34. And it's one of my favorite coffees. It's just amazing how fruity it is. It's just velvety texture on your palate. It's kind of a wine taste to it. But yet it's bold. So like geishas, I love geishas, but it's just so, what would I say, more delicate, and it's not that bold cup of coffee you're used to. It's too almost too delicate, but it's wonderful in its own in its own right. But the SL has that delicacy, but that boldness as well. I just love it. So,
Yeah, it's funny. I mean,
it's like 34.
I almost even said SL28
Yeah,
introducing it, right? Because you automatically think SL28 is the variety, but SL34, and then you kind of have to think twice of, well, why SL28 kind of maybe more famous. I don't why SL34 is an interesting story that it came. Maybe the intention was SL28, and then it came across, and then with this coffee in particular, you went through a washing aerobic process with it. Uh,
yeah.
Remind me the details of the washing anaerobic process that you use specifically for this coffee that we'll put on auction.
So we first thing is we try to we've got a fantastic picking crew. That's a big problem here in Kona. Pickers are paid by the pound, so they get more greedy and they're picking more sloppy picks, I call it. More greedy picks, I call it, where they're picking too much green and with the ripe. So my guys, I pay them well, and then I inspect their bags every day. And if there's any with too much green, I talk to them about it. And anyway, they're usually eager to please, and we get a really good pick. So we pulp the coffee and then either put it in a garbage can with a Ecotech bag, and then we inoculate it with Ven 13, the yeast Ven 13. So we activate the yeast first, put it in there, and then seal the bag. Tie it loosely, tie it so the bag bloats and the CO2 can escape. So it ferments and it's just bubbling. We let it go for overnight, 2 nights. So it ends up being about 60 hours. And then we rinse the coffee thoroughly and then begin the drying process.
And is this one
Yeah.
mechanically dried, or is this
This lot is entirely mechanically dried. Yes.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which is it sounds like sort of a necessity in Kona almost to mechanically dry.
At our elevation, what we consider a higher elevation here in Kona, it clouds up almost every afternoon. So if you sun dry, every afternoon it clouds up. Well, it can prolong the drying period forever because it just never gets below 15% moisture. You do run the risk of mold growing on it if it's on the patio too long as well. But more than that, we've got other coffees coming in, and we need the patio space and we need the dryer space. So just out of necessity, we mechanically dry just about everything other than if we have a tiny batch, we'll sun dry that.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some debate around the industry of kind of drying on patio now, it seems, to where it's like, oh, it tastes like patio. So I do
Wow.
wonder.
That's a new adjective.
Yeah, so
That's a new adjective for cupping, right?
right. I mean, people are coming up with new adjectives and cupping all the time. I don't know about, but in that debate, I mean, it's almost, it wouldn't be surprising that if you could come up with some kind of innovative dryers that people would sort of regress back into mechanically drying coffee more often, just for the consistency, the scalability, the ease of it, especially if they can produce kind of these delicate SL34s that you are doing and they present the cup in the way that you're doing. I would just think cleanliness and, like you said, don't have propane kind of going over the coffee, but come up with different methods to handle sucking out the most moisture of it in a delicate way as well. I think that would be the challenge that other people just haven't found a solution to. And it might just be sitting in their house right now.
Right. Yeah. No, those furnaces are readily available on Amazon, and then there's many suppliers, at least all over the world, I'm sure. You can use diesel or oil-powered furnaces or propane furnaces, and they're heat exchangers. So it's your exhaust. They're designed so the exhaust doesn't go in your house where your babies are sleeping in the house. So it's the same heat exchange, warm, dry air going through, and you can control the temperature. Very simple. On the finer lots like the SL and other varietals that we do, we turn that temperature down a bit, take a little bit longer to dry too.
How long do you dry it for? You know, what kind of
it takes about 20 hours in the mechanical dryer to go from soaking wet to 11%. 11% is probably about the target that we're shooting for.
And you're not, are you playing with higher moisture content, higher humidity sort of lots, or is 10 to 12% really the range that you really look for?
Yeah. So in the state of Hawaii, to pass certification with the state, it can only be between 9 and 12%. So we always shoot for 11 is the target that I go for. 10.5 to 11 for the volume coffee, and then the finer coffees I try to go 11, maybe 11.5.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I mean, so I mean, getting into this process and out of this lot, I'd love to talk just a little bit about this competition you faced in 2000, and then it seems like it kind of competition sort of went. And correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me where I'm wrong on this. It seems like competition sort of may have gone out of style and then come back in with auctions in 2021. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or has this been a continued thing? Walk me through that.
So in Kona, they've had a tradition here for 50 years of the Kona Coffee Cultural Festival, and every year they do a cupping competition. So that's been going on every year. The local competitions are fantastic. There's a number of farmers that it's usually 60 to 80 entries every year. And then probably in the last 12 years, they started a Hawaii Coffee Association meeting. And so that's a big competition as well. So there's two major competitions in Kona. And there's a number of us like myself that kind of live for these competitions. So that's been going on for a long time. But the Cup of Excellence thing, there was a trial that Miguel Mesa had done back in 2021. So that's the only one that's taken place in the state of Hawaii. As you well know, it's expensive. It's costly to put on those events. He went to all the effort and a tremendous amount of time and effort to put it together. So he did it. It was successful. Profitability-wise, it wasn't worth his time. So he's not doing it again. So we'll probably be looking for someone else to perhaps do that for the state of Hawaii again. Either Ace or you guys, whatever. We'll have to figure that out. Yeah. Maybe you need to
Absolutely.
come to Kona.
I think Kona coffee, specialty coffee, seems to be at a point where it is sort of seems like there's a separation into what we've been talking about in this series a little bit, which is high specialty, right? And it almost kind of is this different category of lots. It's harder to almost cut through some of the nuance, and there's it gets almost more and more subjective as you get better and better and better, right? How do you compare a 92 to a 91, right? That gets to be a real challenge. And I think Kona seems to be one that has been missed in that category from what I can see. And that might just be because I live in the sort of the auction world, and it hasn't been these kind of global auctions every year for the last 25 years and built a brand in the same way in this niche audience, right? You guys have gone after other audience. So do you think, is there, our Kona coffees, now that this 2021 competition and auction happened, do you think that is a foothold in Kona where, farmers feel the need to represent themselves to the world? Or is it still, hey, we've got our niche, we've got our avenues to sell?
I think it's a little bit of both. Definitely, we have our niche already. Yes, most of the farmers have no problem selling their crop, but there's a number of farmers that would love to get more into the auction thing. Myself, and there's a number of other farmers that would love to participate in future auction events and so forth, and doing a great job at it too.
Yeah, I think it's an exciting time for it, and hopefully we can make something happen there. But
there are some amazing geishas growing here now too. There's two farmers that brought in the geisha seeds from Panama through legal channels about 12 years ago as well. And both of those farmers are dear friends of mine. And they kept it to themselves for the first 5 years they had it, and did really well, started winning local competitions and getting just unheard of prices, 40, 50, $60 a pound green for their geishas. And all of us, me included, kept hounding them, asking them, hey, can we get some seeds? Can we get some seeds? And no. And it was all good and friendly and so forth. But finally, I caught my friend Doug at a weak moment about 6 years ago. And he allowed me to go do a cleanup harvest on his farm after he had 2 acres of geisha growing. So I got the seed. And now I've got my own little plot of 500 geisha trees, and then we've planted a number of others, and I've got the nursery full of geisha plants for sale right now. So it's spreading like crazy. People are doing amazing things with the local geishas. I have some at what we call 2,600 foot elevation, taste phenomenal, and some here on my farm as well that I think taste phenomenal as well. So the geishas are fantastic, but it's totally different animal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, it must have taken, I don't know if you decided to grow that at 2,600 feet, but that must have been a little bit of a strange thought process, planting coffee that high to see if it would even work. I mean, intuitively it would make sense based on elevation in other countries and how much further they can grow up the mountain than others, how much stress they can handle and still taste amazing. But was that unusual for you to kind of have to plant coffee that high?
Yeah. Well, that's another farm we manage for a lady, and she lives in San Diego, and we take care of her farm. So we just posed the idea, hey, we had, I think, half of the 5 acres of Kona typica, and then she wanted to plant another 5 acres, and I said, hey, I've got this geisha. Do you want to try it? And she goes, yeah, I've heard of geisha. That's famous coffee. Let's try that. So we did plant it, and we've had a few struggles. There was a really wet year, and it drowned some of the babies, the baby coffee trees. I think we lost 400 trees.
Wow.
And we've since replaced them. Most of them are doing good, but there's just bad sections of the farm that are too wet to grow any coffee up there. But the ones that are growing are producing not huge numbers, but incredible quality.
That's really good to hear. I would love to try that at some point. Hopefully I'll get to, but so you're moving to geisha, trying different varieties. We will have a lot more to try from Hawaii. What, over the last 30 years, getting to this point, Kraig, tell us a little bit about the challenges that you faced to get here. What are the standout moments that you've had to sort of power through to stay in the coffee business and move from a hobby to a full-time job?
Well, mostly the cost of everything here, the cost of living, and then it costs a lot of money to create your infrastructure for your mill, for your drying deck, acquiring the land, getting the mortgage, and being able to make the payments. So again, when I was younger, I was in carpentry, and then my in-laws, my father-in-law was a realtor. So since I was married to his daughter, he was going to make something of me, right? He got me into real estate as well, instead of just swinging a hammer. And so I've been selling real estate for 30 years here also. And he was amazing realtor. He did a lot of business. So he taught me that's just the way you do it. So I've always been passionate about coffee, and then we sell real estate also. So the joke is, and the reality is, I sell real estate to support my coffee habit.
Coffee addiction. That's right.
Yeah. So anyway, due to the fact that I've had those different sources of income, and I work all day, every day. It's just what I do. I enjoy it. I love it. I don't even think of any of this as work. It's just what I enjoy doing. Yeah. And you make money to be able to do what you're passionate about. So yeah, I sell mostly coffee farm properties now. I used to sell condos, land, houses, everything. Mostly it's all coffee farm properties now, helping people buy and sell coffee farms. Gotten pretty good at it over the years. And so as a result, I'm able to afford to buy that equipment from Colombia for processing. I'm able to afford to be able to pay guys to help me build dryers, to buy tractors, buy fertilizer when I need to, help with the cash flow. And unfortunately, as you well know, not only here but everywhere in the world, people are on a limited budget. Many farmers are just barely making it and can't afford to do stuff, So I was there for many, many years, and only because of other sources of income and working all day, every day, was able to earn my way and work my way up. And now I own my own farm and working for other people, and they're paying me to take care of their farms. And we have great relationship with those people as well. That which is even
Yeah,
more valuable than the money.
it's always amazing to me how some of these kind of activities sort of converge in people's lives as I hear their stories. It's like you can't over engineer it, right? If
Yeah.
you can pick up real estate from your father-in-law and get to work on that, just get to work on something, then at some point, and you're passionate about coffee, you might say, oh, well, real estate and finance, it's really boring stuff. But at some point they converge. You're selling coffee farms, and then you're conveniently there to manage the coffee farms and process
Yeah.
the coffee, which feeds itself. You know, you're the snake here, right? You're a snake eating its own tail. And I do hear some of this in your story as well, that you couldn't have over engineered this. I mean, it's
Right.
sort of, you have to be awake and aware of opportunities when they present themselves, but don't think too much about over engineering your life, right?
Right. I couldn't have planned this out on a business plan and made this happen. I'm not that smart, but I do take advantage of opportunities when they come. Uh, I love doing deals with people. I love doing business with people. As long as it's a win-win, I'm all for it. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I think the other thing just to note in that story too, which is often overlooked as we talk about the best coffees in the world and SL34 and anaerobic 60-hour processing methods and all this stuff, right? You can get lost in the labels on bags and kind of all the
um,
details of these coffees. They're really exciting. They taste really exciting in the cup, but so much has to do with just cash flow management, right? How do I make
yeah,
enough money to live while I do these other things? And can this hobby support my lifestyle instead of being a lifestyle business kind of thing, right? And it takes a
right.
tremendous amount of work to do that. And I hear that, you're certainly putting the hours in, and so much of this you could call, fate, you could call it an accident, but the hard work you put in every day is not an accident, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No, you got to want it, and you got to do what it takes to make it happen on anything in life.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, on the flip side of that question, on the challenging kind of question, I'd love to hear what you're excited about in the coffee industry, the Hawaiian coffee industry these days. Where do you see things going in the next couple of years for you guys?
Well, so still the vast majority of Kona coffee is exported to the U.S. mainland mostly. A lot of Kona coffee historically has gone to Japan. That market's a bit soft right now due to the economy in Japan. Um, but creating new markets, hopefully with the Middle East, that'd be fantastic. I can't believe it. What a tremendous opportunity. So we'll see, if we can, again, create win-win situations with coffee shops or importers there in the Middle East. I'm all for it. Uh, but probably the biggest growing market for Kona coffee is tourism here in the state of Hawaii. It's just amazing. There's lots of really fascinating, beautiful coffee shops and cafes being opened up, other businesses that are growing and flourishing. A lot of those people are buying my coffees, my specialty coffees, as well as my Kona Typica, which is a very special coffee in its own right as well. So, yeah, the Hawaii market is growing, and it's kind of softened in U.S. sales in the mainland. That's a bit low right now, but I think it'll pick back up. But always exciting to create new markets or be yeah, this whole thing in Dubai is exciting. Hopefully we can establish some good relationships there.
I just want to thank you so much. You've been dedicated to the coffee industry there in Hawaii for 30 years. That's incredible in itself and needs to be appreciated. Thank you for sharing your outlook and your insight here. We are excited to work with you on this Dubai coffee auction, which is being held by the DMCC Coffee Center and M-Cultivo, and just have you a part of that on a table that has 9 different countries, 11 different producers, 16 different coffees. I mean, it's just an incredible thing to have Kona represented there. And so I just want to thank you so much for taking the lead in Hawaii and taking the lead with us to put these coffees on display. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time today on this podcast. It's been so great talking to you.
All right, David. Hey, thanks for all that you're doing, M-Cultivo and then the DMCC. It is just an incredible opportunity. I'm just over the moon excited about seeing what happens at the auction.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.